to the Research Capacity Development Unit Professional Etiquette and Practices Workshop. My name is Relebohile Mos and I'll be your moderator for today. Thank you to everyone that has joined us today. Just a disclaimer that the session is recorded and the recording will be made available on Moodle. Just a few housekeeping rules that please mute your mics throughout the session so we can have a seamless session. A feedback survey will be posted in the chat box. Please kindly fill it in. Please raise your hand so should you have any questions and the facilitator will give you a go ahead. Without wasting time, please allow me to introduce our facilitator for the day by reading her brief bio. Ms. Keisha Mintram is a registered psychometrist at the Center for Psychological Development Career Services. Having been registered for 14 years within the field, she leads the Career Services team at etiquette, who are mandated to support all UJ students in their career journeys. With a passion for psychometry and the demonstrated history of working in the higher educational industry, she believes in long life learning and the importance of assisting students in reaching their full potential. She holds an MA in Industrial Psychology, focused in Industrial and Organizational Psychology from the University of Johannesburg, and she is currently completing her PhD through the College of Business and Economics. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Ms. Keisha.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for that warm introduction. It's my pleasure to be here today, and I'm looking forward to going through the presentation with you. We're going to make it quite interactive, so if you have any questions, if you want to comment, you're welcome then to just raise your hand, and then we'll go from there. So business etiquette is a first topic that is really the core to any business that we approach. So business etiquette is the first way to be hired or fired. So we're going to go through the presentation today. Just to give us a brief outline, we're going to look at what workplace etiquette is, how the different environments work with the workplace etiquette with regards to their dress, how you speak to each other, how you interact with your managers, how you talk on a telephone or over internet or over email, and all of these different things we're going to cover today. So the first question brings to mind is, what is workplace etiquette? So I want you just to raise your hand. You're not going to speak, but give me an indication of how many of you have worked in some environment before, be it part-time work, be it maybe as a tutor, be it maybe as a research assistant. Has anybody within the audience got some work experience? Yes, Pula, I see you. Thank you. Anybody else besides Pula maybe has worked before? Yes. Great. Okay, so now keeping in mind this previous work experience, let's go back and think to yourselves in that company, that place that you were working for and with. Can you identify somebody who you would say does have good workplace etiquette? And I want you to think about the characteristics of that person that stands out for you in your past work experience. What characteristics would they have had? So just jot it in the chat. What would be some of the words that you would describe that person that has got good workplace etiquette? And any descriptive words. Please and thank you. Okay, yes, so they're talking when they speak to you, they say please and thank you. They're respectful, beautiful, courteous, wonderful. Any other words that come to mind? Diligence. Beautiful, Buddha. Yeah. Good. So these are all words that like encompass kind regards. Yes. They are professional, they're honest, beautiful. So within workplace etiquette, there are certain characteristics that stand out. It's our good manners, and what you're saying there with the body language would absolutely fall into this. They perform their duties. Somebody mentioned that they're diligent and professional. They effective communication, there's our diligence, and they show respect, humble, stunning characteristics. Sometimes we go into the workplace and we can take on two different approaches. Either we walk into that workplace and we're like, I own this place and I'm amazing and everybody must love me. Or we walk into the workplace where we may be a little shy, we may be a little bit introverted, we maybe don't converse as well with our fellow colleagues. All of these things have an impression on whether or not you are displaying good business etiquette. So it's very much part of our internal characteristics. But beyond that, there are also things that we can actively do to show how we have good business etiquette. Before we go into that, though, the question becomes why bother with good workplace etiquette? What's the point? Think to yourselves, that person that you identified in your previous work experience that did have good business etiquette, if an opportunity had to come up, a business opportunity, maybe you were starting your own company, maybe you needed to make a client referral so you know that they offer a certain service, it is likely that you would refer them to that person, right? If you've got good business etiquette, you're going to increase your network and you're going to be able to then put business across. So if you yourselves have got good business etiquette, it means that other people will be referring clients to you. Other people will then be saying, look, I've got a job opening. Come and work with me, simply because of this business etiquette. Qualifications, very important. But sometimes even more so than qualifications is the way and the manner that you interact with other people. When we get a job posting, we're going to get 100 applications. All 100 of the applications have got the degree that we're looking for. But what they maybe don't have or what they don't showcase is this sense of business etiquette, that professionalism, that respect, that ability to work within a team. So, of course, you enhance your professional and personal image, and that's what I was talking about there. If you make a good impression, people are going to remember you and then refer business to you. It creates greater career success. I think that's obvious, right? If the more you're communicating with your colleagues, the more you're getting to know them, the more professional you are, the more work you're going to get. It creates a positive and supportive work environment, which is something that we sometimes don't pay enough attention to. But we are spending 8, 9 hours in the work environment. The business etiquette allows us to then form those collegial relationships. And of course, it improves the morale there as well. So, common mistakes. I'm going to read through this list. And if any of you have worked with somebody that maybe has done this, just raise your hand, just for an indication. Did you know somebody within your work environment that spoke with their mouth full? Or when you went into their office, they were playing on their phones, or they were slouching at their desk, or they, said something that was a little bit off key. Anybody ever met anybody that did this within their work environment? And as I say, you can just raise and you can drop your hand again. Yeah. Right. So we've got one that says, I maybe knew somebody like that. Okay, not too many, but it does certainly happen in different work environments. It is a common mistake, and we do it, and we do it far too often. We are multitasking in the work environment, but that playing on your phone, that not paying attention, the incorrect body posture, not seeing like you're interested, all of those make such a big impact with regards to professionalism. This is also a big one. And we tend to get caught up with this if we've been in the work environment for a fair amount of time. You become comfortable with your colleagues, but often that comfort level can make you overstep the mark of the business etiquette. So, always what I suggest when I'm doing this presentation or giving this presentation to others is that at the end of the day, in your work environment, if you're not going to say it to your grandmother or to your pastor or to anybody that you respect, simply don't say it, right? It creates almost a coffee stain. So we all have got characteristics within ourselves that would almost cause like a little bit of a blemish. You can imagine your perfect CV that details everything that you have in terms of your strengths and your qualifications. If you do something inappropriate, or if you're not respectful, if you're not punctual, if you're not all of these things, it just is like you imagine you've put a coffee cup on your perfect CV and you've removed the coffee cup. You end up with this coffee stain. That is what happens when we do these small errors that then can come out. And yes, obviously, the good side of it adds up, and that all adds and puts a deposit into our business etiquette bank account. But the second you misstep, it's quite a big withdrawal. So think back to the beginning when I asked you, how would you describe that person that you worked with that did have good business etiquette? And you put some beautiful words forward. Can you imagine now if you met that person and they were gossiping in the corridors about somebody? Immediately that would cause a coffee stain, and it tends to stick with you quite a bit. So it's being mindful, it's being cognizant, and it's realizing that a small, simple mistake can just put that coffee stain onto your CV. Don't use sarcasm or insults. This one is quite a big one. Specifically, if we go out of South Africa. So, for example, the Americans generally don't use sarcasm in their conversations. The British population generally do use sarcasm in their conversations. It's obviously just a cultural stereotype, but be careful with that because sometimes you might think that it was very clearly sarcastic, but the person that you spoke to now has a coffee stain on the image that they think of you. Oh, maintain boundaries. Your boss or your coworker, they're not your friend, right? They are your colleague or they are your manager. So limit those boundaries. So it's very much still being collegial, still having a professional relationship with them, but you've got to maintain that boundary of at the end of the day, you're not my friend, you're my colleague or my business manager. Now, often when I start talking about this, people tend to disagree with me. Is there anyone that maybe has some thoughts on that? Maybe you don't agree, that you do think that your colleagues should be your friends. Put it in the chat. Let's talk about it. Let's see the different perspectives. Don't talk too loudly or too softly. Don't interrupt. It's a big one. Invading personal space, I put it a little bit later in the slides as well because it is such a big one. Generally in South Africa, we have a 1 meter acceptable space between us, right? That's just our culture. And generally people feel more comfortable if there's a 1 meter space between you and them. When you walk into a person's office, be mindful of that personal space. Come into the doorway, but don't come right up against the desk. Don't lean over a person when they're busy working on their computer. It's personal space and boundaries, which again causes that coffee stain. You also need to maintain your own business space. So be responsible for your own mess. And that differs from when you are working in a cubicle, when you're working in an open space, when you're working within a closed office. It really doesn't matter. The same rule applies. Make sure that you are always portraying a positive image of yourself. So we kind of spoke about what not to do. So let's talk about what to do. So when in conversation with other people, try to use their name, right? You want to be inclusive, you want to acknowledge their names. You also will, when you are going into a meeting or into a venue, whoever's in front, you're going to open the door and you're going to keep that door open for everybody that is following you, right? And of course, then you always thank somebody if they've held the door for you. But be careful, I have said there, don't say thank you too much. Maybe you had a colleague like this in your work environment where they just thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It gets a little bit excessive and it comes across as somewhat needy and somewhat dependent. So, yes, absolutely say thank you when you need to, but don't be in excess of that. Dress, we're going to speak a lot about today. You ensure that your hands and your nails are clean. Tattoos and piercings is also a little bit of a controversial one. However, when you are going into quite a corporate environment, generally your tattoos and your piercings are hidden or removed as appropriate, especially when you are going for an interview. Even if the business culture is one that is a little bit more casual in nature, it doesn't matter. Still, you start off conservatively. And once you're in the field, once you're in the business, obviously, then you can adapt to the culture that is around you. You're going to wear conservative clothes. At the end of the day, I want to be focusing on who you are as a person. I don't want to be distracted by flashy or excess jewelry, bulky jewelry, or flashy clothes, or revealing clothes. All of that is going to take me away from who you are as a person. That's not what we want to see. Although it's important to practice personal hygiene, use deodorants or perfume sparingly. Anybody had anybody within their last work environment who had quite a strong perfume or quite a strong deodorant? Anybody? You can just raise your hand and put it down again. Nobody. Okay, sometimes we've got to be careful that because we can't smell other people, it might be because our fragrance is too strong. So do keep that in mind with regards to the fragrances. We want a fragrance, but nothing that is overpowering. You always want to dress in the same manner as senior management. So anybody got any idea why we do that? And you can put in the chat. If I'm applying for a subordinate position, why do you think it's a good idea for me to try and dress as management? Plot it in the chat, unmute yourselves, whichever one you prefer. Why should I dress in a way that is professional or in line with my manager? Nobody wants to talk. Oh, here we go. To demonstrate shared value. That is amazing. That is so good. Sense of belonging. Fantastic. It's exactly that. So because of how you dress and because of how you are presenting yourself, I can see whether or not you are in line with the company values. That sense of belonging is also so very powerful and such a nice comment that you've put there. It is. It's showing that I am in this company and that I relate to people in this company. Also, the reason why we tend to dress up is because you want senior management to realize that you almost look the part and you fit the part so that when an opportunity for promotion comes, they might be inclined to pick you because they know the degree of grooming that they might need to do with you is a lot less than somebody that is not dressing appropriately. So what does that mean? Of course, it depends on the environment. But for men, generally it is a suit or fitted trousers with full-sleeved and collared shirts. You also want to make sure that your trousers fit you well, that the length of it goes down and to your toes, and then there's a 2 centimeter gap by your heels, right? You want to wear a belt. You're not going to be revealing in any sense. Your hair is at length, it is neat, and then the same with your facial hair as well. As long as you look well groomed, there really is no standard with regards to the rest of what style it needs to be. It just needs to be professional and well groomed. You would have a tie, nice press suit, polished shoes, matching belts, button up shirt. Women, right? So for the men, you tend to have less options. As women, we tend to have a little bit more options. You can have your suits, your dresses, your skirts, all of those are fine. Just make sure with that skirt that it is an appropriate length. So you want it to be just below the knees. You also do not want to wear sleeveless tops within the work environment. If you have a top that is showing your shoulders, make sure that you have a jacket and you would wear your jacket so it's not revealing. Hair, same rules apply, properly maintained and out of your face. So you just don't want it in your eyes that it causes a distraction. You want natural looking makeup, keep jewelry to a minimum. Obviously, again, that will depend on the industry. If you are going into a sales representative job where you are selling makeup products, chances are your makeup would be a little bit more applied. Clothes ironed, pressed, they need to fit you properly, right? Not too tight, not too loose. Just make sure that you are looking professional. And then again, your polished shoes. So let's talk about introducing yourself. Anybody feel confident when they introduce themselves. And maybe if you're very brave, you can unmute yourself. I want to hear how you would introduce. So introduce yourself to me. Anybody brave? Or you can write it in the chat. Tell me how you would introduce yourself. While we're waiting for the chat, couple of things when we introduce ourselves. You'll be standing up straight. You'll be nice and confident. And again, because you've dressed appropriately, that confidence tends to naturally flow. Generally, the person in power will extend their hand and then we would respond. Careful with that though, because in some cultures it's not appropriate to shake hands. So normally my rule of thumb is that if they extend their hand, I will then reciprocate that. If they don't extend their hand, then I'll simply just nod and obviously smile and make eye contact. Absolutely no hugging, no kissing, tapping on the back. None of that will be done in the business environment. When you need to introduce your colleague, you're going to use their full name, their surname, their title. You are not going to introduce other people by their nicknames, right? And then you would also then add a brief information about somebody. So this is the person, this is their background, this is their name. So in the office, a few of you actually said how professionalism, diligence, and sticking to the office hours were your descriptors of what work etiquette is. And absolutely, you need to honor your working hours there. It falls in line with, yes, your working times might be from 8 to 4. I can guarantee you, if I'm your manager and I notice that you are coming in at 5 to 8 and you're leaving at 5 past 4, those extra 5 minutes on either side make such a positive impression. Again, it is showing me that if I needed to promote you, or if I wanted to promote you, you would be able to easily adapt with that because our senior managements generally do need to be in office a little bit earlier. Be positive, supportive, friendly towards your colleagues. Personal life is private, right? Your colleagues are not your friend. They are simply your work colleagues. You would have a professional relationship with them, but nobody wants to know that you were out drinking last night. Nobody wants to know how you were partying last night. That is not appropriate for the work context. Communicate with your colleagues, right? Open communication is important, especially if they're doing a project with you. So you want to have that continuous feedback. Also with your managers and with your line managers, you'll make sure that that feedback is there. Follow appropriate channels of communication. This is a big coffee stain if you get this wrong. If you've got a problem, you will know what the communication lines are. But to remind you, you will then go to your manager. Your manager, if they can't assist you or if they feel like they need to follow it up, they will take it to their manager, and so on. If I need to communicate, always communicate with my line manager. My line manager will then choose to take it to her line manager if it is appropriate. I do not ever bypass my line manager and just jump a step and speak to one of the senior managers. Be committed, be accountable, be willing to work hard and go the extra mile, and have a can-do attitude. So careful when we get into the habit of saying, but this is not my job, or it's not my responsibility. That is noticed, right? And again, the grooming then for promoting you would be more challenging. So you're unlikely to be noted for a promotion if you don't have that can-do attitude. Ask for feedback. It's also a big one that we tend to sometimes shy away from, and it's not necessary. Feedback is something that is generally not given to us. Generally, we get feedback if there's a problem. So if there's a problem with my work performance, I'm going to be told of that through my coworkers and through my line manager. But generally, if there's not a problem with my performance, I might not be told that. So ask for it. Ask, once you've completed a project, say to them, anything I could improve on there, and take notes of that feedback and obviously implement it for the next time. Respect people's privacy. Don't interrupt people while they're on the phone, and don't try and communicate with them in sign language when they are on the phone. So if you walk into my office and I'm on the phone, it would be better for you to then step back, to leave, and then to come back as soon as I'm off the phone. Remember, I would have also seen that you were in my doorway, so I'll come find you as soon as my phone call is ended. Don't just hover there waiting for me to finish the phone, and don't try to communicate with me in a way that I'm trying to figure out what you're saying and what's happening on the phone. Don't lower your professional standards, right? Just because somebody else is not abiding by the professional standards, don't allow that to then impact on yours. Refrain from irritating habits. Anybody had a coworker that did something annoying? And if so, just jot it in the chat. What would you think would be an annoying or irritating habit? What do you think? Yes, Rev, you want to tell me? I don't know if you can unmute yourself. Try. Oh, such a good one. Touching, absolutely. Keep coughing without covering mouth, absolutely. Talking too much, praise. Reb, are you able to type or are you able to unmute? Okay, once you figure that out, you let us know and then we'll come back to you. Absolutely. Like clicking a pen, being on the cell phone, not talking to you. Oh, yeah, that's a heavy one. Presenting other colleagues' ideas as your own. Absolutely. If you do that and you take somebody else's idea and you present it, it's going to be a coffee stain on your CV. People are going to remember that about you. And all the good things that you've done is going to be blemished by this coffee stain. Absolutely. That's a big one, Julia. Thank you. Um, yeah, chewing food with their mouths open or absolutely coughing all over the place or sneezing and not covering. It's really basic stuff, but it makes such an impact. So let's talk about the kitchen. Okay. The kitchen, we need to be mindful of how we use the kitchen. The kitchen is not your at-home kitchen. Whatever you do at home in your kitchen, that is your business. But at work, it is a shared space. So, you can't bring 7 containers of food to work and take up the whole entire fridge, right? It's not going to be professional. Don't store food in the refrigerator that has a strong or pungent odor, right? Nose or toothpicking. Absolutely. Nobody's going to argue with that one. Yes, that would be a bad habit. Um, so with the food and storing it in the refrigerator, and I'm comfortable to share it with you, in my previous work environment, we had a group of the colleagues that they decided they're all going to go on a cabbage soup diet. Man, cabbage soup is not fun to leave it in the fridge. I think that place the workplace felt like cabbage soup for the next year and a half. It was dreadful. So yes, make sure you're not bringing in like strong smelling foods. You don't want to be noticed for the wrong things. The kitchen counters, you're going to keep them clean. You're going to wipe them down. You're going to wash your own dishes. Right? You do it at home. Do it in the work environment too. And don't take other people's food. This is also a big one. At the end of the day, the companies might provide you with tea, with coffee, with milk, and with sugar. But that milk that they're providing you there for is just for your coffee and your tea. Don't go and fill your cereal container. It's going to cause a blemish, right? Make sure that if you want cereal at work, you bring your own milk for that. You're not cooking in the kitchen. Oh, also a big one. You are just warming up your food. So even like with the basic stuff, if you want to eat 2 minute noodles, that's fine. But make the 2 minute noodles at home and then use the microwave in the kitchen to simply just warm it up. Because otherwise you're going to be spending 7 minutes making your 2 minute noodles in the microwave. And at the end of the day, people only have the half-an-hour lunch that they also need to warm up their food with. Put it in twice, but I do think it's important. Wipe down that counter when you're done and don't be excessive. So, just because the company is providing you with sugar, you don't need 5 sugars in your tea just because it's free. Use what is appropriate, what is respectful, and what is professional. All right, dealing with coworkers. So again, you're going to use their names and not their nicknames. You are never going to address a coworker by pet names such as honey, dear, love, darling. It's not professional. Keep an open mind and be respectful towards others. Avoid crossing your arms. So that's talking about our body language. So remember when I said when you introduce somebody, you have a nice straight, upright posture. When you're talking, don't keep these arms crossed. It's very closed. Do not criticize or reprimand someone in front of others, right? Don't converse with others. Yeah, sorry. Don't converse with us in front of your co-workers in a language that they do not understand. This is difficult. It's very difficult within the South African content because we do have our 11 official languages. Just be mindful though, if you and your colleague are speaking in a language, but you are in the presence of others, rather than speak in a language that everybody would understand. It's just so that it doesn't give the impression that you are gossiping about somebody else that is in your presence. So again, take it or leave it, but this does make a difference with regards to how you are able to function within a team setting. Thank people and give them praise. Oh, it's something we just don't do enough of. Respect personal space. Refrain from discussing matters relating to political or religious views. Don't do that. There is absolutely no point. Again, they're not your friends. They are your colleagues and your co-workers. You need to be respectful and don't create conflict when there is no need for such. In potential conflict situations, be assertive but not aggressive, right? And if you are professional in your encounters, you can maintain that. It's very easy to not get aggressive because I know I'm being professional and I know that what I've done and what I'm defending is then professional in that sense. So it's very easy to defend professional behavior. When in conflict, make sure to address the problem and not the person. No sexual advances, no any advances. So if you have a colleague within the workplace that is bullying you, right? So you feel like there's a bullying going on. What would be your first step? How would you deal with that? And you can jot it in the chat as well. Somebody in the workplace is mistreating you in some way, and let's call it bullying. How would you address that? What would be the appropriate manner of dealing with bullying in the workplace? If it's quicker, you can also unmute. Very good. That's exactly that. Report them to your supervisor or HR. First, I would withdraw. Now, what are you meaning there? Are you meaning that you won't add fuel to the fire? So you will almost protect yourself for a little bit? Hmm. Check company policy. Beautiful. And you follow that. Absolutely. It's a heavy one, this picking up the courage thing. So remember within the workplace, there is professional etiquette. Bullying is simply not allowed. So yes, you will look at your company policy. Most companies, if not all, have got a policy on bullying or any inappropriate relationships or inappropriate behavior. So you will go to HR. Remember also, and you will find this out when you're working with the company, but at the end of the day, those conversations, they still need to protect. It is a protected conversation. And you can see the replications or repercussions for why. If somebody is bullying me within the workplace, I then go to HR and HR then make this big thing out of it and they don't support me. I am more vulnerable than I was in the beginning. So HR have got very clear guidelines on how they then deal with that. How do they move forward or how do they proceed going forward? You are within your rights and you must use this right. If something is happening within the work environment that is not professional, you report it. If it is to do with something that is HR policy, you would absolutely report it to HR. Sometimes HR also do have an anonymous line, so you can still feel more comfortable there if you're struggling with the courage. And then obviously, if it's not your line manager, you could report it to your line manager. Yes, so that's Cecilia is exactly that. So what if the person that is bullying you is your boss? How are you going to handle that? Straight to HR. Right. So with bullying and with harassment, if it is someone that is not your boss or line manager, you can report it to your line manager. They are then responsible for reporting it to HR. Obviously, if it is your boss or line manager, you are within your rights to go straight to HR and sort it out. So it's a good question because it tends to be sadly a little bit more common than what we would like and what we expect. Still, it's important when you're reporting to HR, when you're reporting to your line manager, you are being respectful and you're keeping your emotions in check. What happens if it doesn't stop after you report it? In the HR policies, the HR department will detail what the steps would be. So sometimes there is a training that will go on so that the person that is behaving in such way is trained to not continue. Other times, and there's few steps in between, it can eventually lead to their dismissal. So they are in the HR policy, they will guide, if you report this, these are the steps that HR is going to take. But it is, I mean, it's a very important thing because we're spending 9 hours or 8 hours in this work environment. It needs to be one that is conducive. Also keep in mind then that if you are presenting that bullish behavior, be aware that HR are able to reprimand, give a warning, or then cease the contract based on that. So yes, it's very important to know it for ourselves and also know it for ourselves in the sense of protecting ourselves. Good. Um, the other bit that I wanted to put on is just with different ability levels. So careful. If somebody is in a wheelchair, if they have a guide dog, if they are visually impaired, if they have a hearing aid, all of these things you need to be cognizant of. Anything that is a walking device, so it can be the walker, it can be a walking stick, it can be a wheelchair, anything like that. Remember, you do not touch. So it would be if somebody has got a disability and they're using that device, if you touch that wheelchair, it is like somebody has now put their hand on your shoulder and is busy touching you. That forms part of them. So respect a person's walking age. Do not touch. Also, do not assume that they are incompetent. If you see that somebody might need assistance, regardless of ability level, you will ask them always, can I help you? Do you need any help with that? And you will listen to what they say. Guide dogs, no interaction with the guide dog, right? It is very distracting for them. The guide dogs are on duty if they are assisting the person. So no touching, no fluffing, no saying, like calling the dog or pulling him in like that. None of that. Leave the dog alone. Also, obviously, with somebody with a hearing impairment, you're not going to shout at them, but you are going to speak clearly, to speak slowly, and to use your facial expressions and your body language when you are conversing with them. Good. So as I say, this one is very important. You always ask the person if they need assistance, and it's everybody with all of their ability levels. You don't just assume and almost like pick somebody up and move them out of the doorway. Just as you wouldn't do that necessarily to your colleague, you're not going to do the same thing for somebody that is in a wheelchair. The same professional rules apply. Okay, so I've got a little bit of an activity for us, right? The activity is that sometimes you might be put in a situation which is a little bit strange. So I'm going to put you in that strange situation. Let's pretend your colleague came into your office and they came in and they said, hello, nice to see you. Here is a present. And they give you this rock. Let's pretend it didn't have the word thank you on it. It's just a plain rock. What would you say in response? They walked into your office, they're so very excited, and they've given you a rock. Any ideas on how we deal with that? Nobody knows what to do if a person walks in and literally gives you a rock or a stone. Yeah, and that's the point. Thank you, but I don't accept presents in my work environment. There is something there. Let's say it was from a colleague, and they are collegial with you, and they gave you this rock. Want to ask what's the meaning of that rock? Anybody else got any ideas when somebody hands you a random rock? Katlego, you're on the mark. You are on the mark. You say thank you and you move on, right? It's a funny example because it does put us in a bit of an awkward situation that we're like, I now have this rock. But exactly that. You would graciously accept the rock if it's your colleague, right? If it's your client, then you're right saying earlier that you can't accept gifts within the work environment. But if your colleague has come and they saw this rock while they were on the walk and they thought of you and they gave you a rock, you would graciously accept it. And you would say something along the lines of, oh, what a beautiful rock. This is stunning. I have a fireplace at home and I'm going to put the rock on the fireplace. Or I needed a paperweight recently and this is going to work perfectly. So you would still be gracious. We tend to feel a little bit awkward, but if it is appropriate, as in it is a colleague, went for a walk, saw a rock, thought of you, yes, you are going to graciously accept the rock, right? So it's still being professional and being aware of business etiquette. We've got to be careful not to go to the extreme end of that and almost become quite blunt in our reactions or our interactions with others. It is simply a rock. You say thank you, you be gracious, you be kind, and then you move on from that. Okay, so don't go to the extreme of business etiquette where you are so um, almost like blocked off that you are then missing out on the collegial relationships. It's still business, it is still professional, but it is still kind and gracious and all the rest of this. Okay, so in a meeting, we know these, but it's always good to emphasize don't have your phone on. Ensure that you take along everything that you're going to need, be on time for meetings, and in fact, be there a little bit earlier. It makes such a difference. You're going to be prepared, and if you're unable to attend for any reason, you are going to then send your apologies. Make sure that you're focused. Make sure that you wait for your turn to speak so that you don't interrupt others, don't interrupt the presenter. I think you guys are not going to have a problem with that because you might be on the edge of not speaking. But absolutely, if you were to speak, as you know, you would just then raise your hand and then you would speak when you are ready. If you're arranging a meeting, make sure that the venue is set up, everything is neat. And again, avoid that mindset where you say, but this is not my job. So if you have to set, or if you need a meeting and you need a meeting with your colleague, then set up the venue, book out the venue, maybe make or just bring through a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, whatever it is, get away from the sense of this is not my job. So therefore, I'm not going to set up the teacups. People will notice if you're doing more than what you are contracted to do. Don't waste people's time. If you can send an email, rather do that. Telephone etiquette, it's very much the same. But again, be focused, have that pen and paper ready for you if you need to take a message. If you're taking a message, make sure that you have got the contact details, the name of the person, and obviously what it is about. How would you answer the phone? Type it in the chat. So you now are working for, what should we say? PsychEd. Let's say PsychEd. You are an employee of PsychEd. How would you answer the phone? Anybody know how to answer a phone? Okay. It is possible that you're still busy typing, and if you are, that's great. Finish, and then we'll talk about it. But you answer the phone by a greeting. Good day. Kosher speaking. From Psycad, how can I help you? So it's pretty much those four things that you need to cover. It's a quick greeting, your name, where they've reached, and how you can be assistance to them. Careful that you keep in mind that you never know who's going to be phoning you. It could be a customer, it could be your senior manager, it could be anybody. So you always answer the phone in a way that is professional, that no matter who's on the other side, you are then able to converse with them. You're going to use professional language, no slang, and you are going to make sure that you are polite even when the caller is not. So, with those that did work previously, you can just raise and put down your hand again. Any of you ever had an unhappy client on the phone? On the phone, or maybe they were in your presence where they weren't happy? Hey, we got definitely one that had one. Yes, good. How did, and you can put in the chat, if you have had one, how did you deal with that? How did you get around this customer or client or patient or whatever they were walking into your office and moaning at you? How do you deal with somebody that is highly aggressive? And again, you can put in the chat. But basics are yes. Ref, do you want to unmute yourself? Wonder if you can. You should be able to. Yeah, I can hear something. Yes. Oh, I heard something and then it went away. Hmm. Okay, we can't hear you yet. Anybody else want to give it a go? If you got a customer screaming at you, how do you control that situation? Yeah, listening, very important. Beautiful. What else could we do if the customer is busy shouting at us? Maybe we can even ask the question differently. What's the worst thing to do if a customer is shouting at you? Good. Yes, absolutely. Keep up positive energy. Do you think that's the worst thing, or do you think that's a good thing? Okay. So what? Yeah, what's the worst thing you can do if a customer's dropping the call? Okay, yeah, that's terrible. Good. Don't do that. Good. Very good. What else might you do that is not going to help the situation if somebody is moaning at you? Shouting. Exactly. Have you ever had an argument, right, with anybody that maybe even a family member? One, oh, tell them to calm down. Yeah, Julia, you're absolutely right. That's not going to work. Good job. But exactly that. So you're not going to shout back at them. Shouting is not going to help anyone. And you certainly are not going to tell them to calm down. And you certainly are not going to put down the call. Good. It is just about hearing them, letting them know that you are going to do your best effort to try and resolve this situation. Absolutely right. You're not going to take it personally. At the end of the day, customer has a complaint, and we're going to see the best way to resolve that. We remain professional at all times. By us remaining professional and calm, you will see the clients feed off that positive energy then. So they are able to then, in themselves, speak clearly and slow down their talk. It's another technique that you can use, but of course, don't go to the extreme, where if a client is shouting at you and is being ever so loud, speak clearly, speak slowly, speak calmly, and generally they will then start to mirror you as long as you are being a truthful listener, that you actually are paying attention to what they are trying to tell you. Good. No slang, right? Don't put in those see you later or any of the, like goodbye, thank you for your call, and goodbye. Let them hang up first so that they're not cut off. Also, you're not going to phone the client 5 times in a row. You phone them once, you leave a message, and that's with your colleagues as well. So many a time we get caught up in the habit of, now that we have, many industries use WhatsApp, they use MS Teams, they use emails. Don't get into the habit where you send somebody an email and then 5 minutes later you send them a WhatsApp about the same thing, and then 5 minutes later you send them a Teams call or a Teams message. No. Send the message once and then you wait for your colleague or peer to respond to you. Good. Over email as well. Just watch these email trains, right? Especially in today's world where phishing attacks come out left, right, and center. Don't forward on an email train. Only keep it professional. With our WhatsApp groups as well, and this is where we sometimes struggle, even though it's WhatsApp, even though we use it for our personal life, when you're communicating to people within the business space, make sure that is only during office hours and keep it professional. Once you've written something down on WhatsApp or on email, it never disappears. It's always there. So make sure it doesn't then leave a coffee stain. Create an out of office reply when you're going on leave or out of office. On that out of office reply, you're also going to make sure that you've clearly stated who can contact you and when, or not who can contact you, who they can contact in replacement of you if you are on leave. Be confidential, be professional. Check also your personal email addresses. Make sure, and this is when you apply to a job as well, that your email address is appropriate. For example, name and surname at Gmail is first one. That's beautiful. Do that. Don't have any of your nicknames within the email address. Don't have pet names within your email address. Keep it professional so that whenever anybody emails you, they are not seeing a different side of you. You're going to use professional language, concise, to the point, proofread. On our emails and on Microsoft Word, they all have the read aloud function. The read aloud function is amazing because sometimes you're typing something, you're doing it nice and quickly, and then you send, but instead of, you haven't misspelled a word, but you've used the incorrect word in its place. So instead of saying thought, you've said through or thorough or decided or determined. You're using the wrong word in that sentence. The read aloud function is a really, really nice life hack, so use that. Don't write in all capitals. We tend to be better at that now. Also, watch your emojis within an email. If you feel like you have to put an emoji in to fix or to make sure that the person is understanding your tone, rather rewrite the email. Emojis don't always come through, so they can come through as a funny little block with and a question mark in there. So it becomes awkward. As I said, tone, if it's not right, instead of adding a smiley face, rewrite that email and make sure that your tone is then correct. You're going to respond as soon as you can. In your email, you're going to put down the subject and the title. We receive 150 emails a day. It's important that in that title line, you've clearly said what you need. You are going to be courteous, cordial, and warm. Think before you type. And obviously, emails can be used as evidence in disciplinary processes or in application processes. So do make sure that it's always professional. The end of the day, the reason why we emphasize this so much is that it is the currency of success. There are going to be 100 other people applying for that same job that you are applying to. Make sure you stand out. And this is really the easiest way to do it. I have put some contacts there for you. If you just go onto our SciCat website, you will see all of the contacts, and on there you'll also be able to send us an email. While I still have you, though, any questions that you might have, or any concerns that you might have, you can unmute or you can put it in the chat there. But while those are coming through, then from my side, we are done for my section today. I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon. I will stay on a little while if there are any questions.
All right, while we wait, I just would like to say thank you to everyone that has joined us today, more especially our facilitator, Ms. Mintram, for taking her time preparing for this session. We are truly honored. Um, Sorry, Miss Keisha, before you leave, I have a question.
Yes, of course.
Do you guys offer career services to staff as well, or is it just students?
It is just students. The staff are serviced by Lyra.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's our wellness provider, yes.
Oh, all right, thank you. I think if we do not have any more questions, maybe we can close off the session early. Please just confirm if that's okay.
Perfect from my side.
All right. Thank you to everyone that has joined. Thank you so much to you, Ms. Keisha, for preparing such an informative session. I hope everyone will have a great day going forward. Goodbye from my side.
Thank you. Goodbye.